Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadian Electricity Association's Conversation webinar series. The CEA is the voice of the electricity industry in Canada. My name is Farhan Mirza, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's webinar. The Conversation series features presentations from CEA's corporate partners, and the series will highlight a variety of Canadian and international solutions to current and future challenges faced by the industry. Working with CEA's corporate partners, these webinars have been developed to be of specific interest to those working in the electric utility space from generation through to the customer. For a list of upcoming sessions, check out CEA's website at www.electricity.ca. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to go over. Our session today is scheduled to run from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Questions can be asked, and we would encourage you to do so as they come to mind by typing them into the chat function in your window. They will be asked at the end of the presentation. A brief survey will be sent to the webinar participants following the session today. We very much appreciate your feedback and are interested in any topics that you would like to have included in the conversation series in the future. Please keep an eye out for future webinars and events through CEA's monthly newsletter, Current Affairs. With over 6,000 subscribers, Current Affairs is the place to go for Canadian industry news as we connect the national value chain from generation through to the customer. If you'd like to receive Current Affairs, you can subscribe to this free publication via CEA's website, again at electricity.ca. So today, Itron will present our webinar on leveraging multi-purpose network to enable digital utilities and smart cities. Utilities today are faced with dynamic shifts in their business landscape with changing customer expectations, growing penetration of DERs, advent of new competitive offerings, and increasing regulatory requirements. At the same time, cities are looking to modernize their infrastructure and make their communities more livable and sustainable. Traditionally, electric, gas, water utilities in cities have had independent systems to manage their distribution operations that cater to specific use cases. To adapt with evolving landscape, utilities and cities can partner together by leveraging these benefits of a multi-purpose network that can help drive the digitization of roadmaps of utilities while enabling smart city applications for the communities they serve. Today's conversation will dive into how this shared infrastructure can be leveraged and thereby generate economies of scale for the province. Joining us today are Ty Roberts, Vice President Network Solutions at Itron, and Itai Dadon, Global Head Smart Cities at Itron. Gentlemen, welcome to today's conversation webinar series. And Itai, I'll transfer the webinar over to you to start us off.
Thank you very much, Farhan. Speaking on mute is never a good thing. Thank you very much for having us. Delighted to be here today and to talk about this topic. And really, I wanted to first remind us a little bit, Itron is a company that has a deep and very meaningful purpose, that for me is extremely important, which is to really how to make the world more resourceful. And more mindful of the resources that we have by providing tools and technology and services to help utilities and cities around the world to better manage their energy resources and water. And that task is becoming more difficult as we go along. And one of the things that are making it a little bit more challenging is the climate change. As 2020 was not an easy year, and we had a lot of other challenges, but we must not forget that the climate change process is still going on, and in fact the rate and the frequency of natural disasters happening because of it is growing in an exponential way. We've grown to about 400 disasters per year, major disasters per year, which is about 4 times more than what we used to have during the 70s. If we look, I was in a panel with the mayor of Miami recently, and he was talking about the impact of a hurricane in the tropical storm Eta, and then I realized that we had to start using Greek alphabet letters because we were just out of other, letters in our normal alphabet for disasters, and that's by itself is a sign. And last week we also saw in Southern California utilities shutting down power to prevent wildfires in December, which is kind of crazy. What we're seeing is that these challenges and these impact, these disasters, whether they're natural disaster or man-made, are not only happening more and more frequently, but their impact and their amplitude goes higher and higher. And we see the ravaging wildfires in California, Oregon, Portland, and not only destroying millions of hectares of forests, but also houses and unfortunately taking victims of lives. And of course, the pollution that it generates doesn't stop at the borders, as we probably seen, and as you felt recently. We're also seeing more attempts of hacking and other ways of disruption from nefarious organizations, and in Canada recently, with the revenue services being impacted, just one recent example. So these disasters are directly impacting not only our ability to reach our sustainability objectives, but also just carrying on normal life. And that really, the challenge of resiliency is one that we're taking very seriously at Itron. And how do we bring in together solutions that are both helping our customers improve their sustainability, but also improve directly the communities that we serve, be more resilient. To be more resilient, we need to be more agile, and one of the means to become more agile is to have the right infrastructure that allows to get real information of what is going on across our territory, across our assets, and across the communities that we serve. Having that information in real time at the right time, at the right place, the only way to really generate the necessary insight to allow us to act intelligently and to allow us to respond, whether it's proactively to prevent or to retroactively to react a disaster or something that's going on, in order to minimize the impact and bring back operations and life to normal as fast as possible. So we know that connecting all these assets is a mechanism to get that data, but for that we need the network, we need the tools, put it in place, and that'd be extremely expensive. And therefore, sometimes it's very difficult to for cities or for utilities. Okay, we have so many things that we need to do and connect. Where do we actively start? And get the right priority is very complicated. Is it more important to deploy streetlight controls, or to build a whole set of a new school, maybe? Those are the type of questions that cities that we talk to are facing, and it's very difficult, as we're not directly comparing apples to apples. For that, we effectively built a way of thinking and a tool to enable this prioritization exercise, and we call this the three-dimensional return on investment. Effectively thinking about what are the benefits of each one of these alternatives of investments that we have across three different domains: the social, the environmental, and the economic domains. And putting all three kind of on a three-dimensional graph allow us to understand which one of these alternatives for investments are most important. Let's take a few examples now, and I want to maybe run through some very specific examples of things that we've actually done at Itron, different areas and regions. And let's start with the social dimension, where at the end of the day is really about improving quality of life. So first of all, whoops, wrong direction. A quick sensing, putting acoustic sense with deployed at all cities. Noise pollution is a real issue for a lot of our communities, and understanding there that is happening is the first step in order to take a basically action in order to improve that. And understanding that is not so easy, and these acoustic sensors that are deployed across the city, maybe along highways or near construction zones or near entertainment areas, are really providing a really interesting, insightful data. Gas leak detection, stain sensors that we've deployed, for example, in New York City with Con Ed partnership. These are really putting a lot of gas as we're detecting them very early on, and providing the information through the AMI network. These are extremely sensitive sensors that make sure that we have not only fire department crews, but also UT crews coming into these leaks early on and preventing extreme situations. Outdoor street and lighting area, of course, at Itron, we're world leaders in this domain and deploying street lights, monitoring and control solutions to cities around the world, including in Canada, and that really has a direct impact on quality of life. And for example, in the city of Chicago, we've worked to start deployment of these streetlight solutions first in neighborhoods that were underserved communities living in them. And that was very important because it reduces crime, it improves safety, it brings up more commerce and helps safety on the roads, of course. All these are very important aspects of quality of life. And another example is wastewater flow monitoring to prevent overflow. This is something we did in the Miami-Dade County in collaboration there with the county sewage and water department. This is again showing a multitude of solutions that have a direct impact on the quality of life of the communities that we serve. Environmental stewardship is extremely important, of course. We talk about how to engage consumers for the response program, for example. These sewage overflow protection, of course, have a very important environmental positive impacts and benefits. Pressure monitoring and conservation of water are front and center of our portfolio and mindset, and really bring tremendous results to cities as we provide a proactive water leak detection in the infrastructure and avoid tremendous loss of that important resource. And of course, air quality monitoring becoming more and more important, and we see the value of hyperlocal air quality monitoring as opposed to one station across the sea. That brings really a much better understanding of what is going on, and a very strong ability to react to whether it is local pollution or and also preventive care by allowing maybe sensitive population when there are spikes in bad air quality. We're mostly about young population, senior population, so schools can spend their resources in classrooms as opposed to going outside, for example. Many areas of the world, this is unfortunately the reality of where pollution is. And of course, all this cannot happen if there is not a very, very solid economic ground upon which all these solutions have to stand. And these solutions really have the benefit of not only improving the structure, but also reducing the cost. They're all the way to the end users, the citizens, to have more dollars basically to spend on other things. And we see that through a lot of solutions around our grid management and distributed energy resources, to improve the management of these grids that are becoming more and more complex, as you all know, of course. Improving traffic, of course, the first thought is that this is an amazing environmental benefit, but that reducing traffic times in a city also has a tremendous economic benefit. And as people spend more time working or shopping or with their family instead of stuck in traffic jams on the roads. Smart metering, of course, level wastewater monitoring, and here, just to go back to the example of Miami-Dade County, we each one of these overflow events of the sewage carry, at least in Florida and the US, a very strong fines from the EPA agency, and therefore avoiding those have a very positive economic impact on the utilities. So to summarize, there is a need to increase the ability to think about this infrastructure that every city needs to deploy in order to be more agile, in order to be more to achieve sustainability objectives and their resiliency objectives. Then where to start is reported to think about the dimensional return on investment, about the economic needs, the social needs, and the environmental needs, and measure the benefit different solutions across three domains in order to take the priorities. And every city, every utility, every community is different, and they will have different weights across each one of these domains. But we believe that an approach where creating a single infrastructure not only brings in an economic reality that is much more sound, but also allows us to start to accelerate this digital transformation that really helps bring all this value to the communities. Creates return on investment is not just the return on investment that is measured in dollars, but also in how we improve the quality of life, how we bring in these sustainability objectives to life, and at the end of the day, how do we build on that infrastructure over the decades, as we're not just doing it in a one time, but this is a process that is continuously evolving. With that, I would like to hand it over to Ty Roberts to continue the presentation.
Thank you very much, Itai. And thanks for the introduction. And thanks to CEA for hosting us as well. So I think, as Itai just did a great job of outlining, is there's no shortage of opportunity in front of municipalities for investment in areas where citizens' lives can be improved, where carbon footprint and emissions objectives can be met. It's a target-rich environment, if you will. Lots of opportunity. The challenge is always, I think, as Itai said, is how do you prioritize and how do you fund, and how do you provide access to those opportunities. As we've begun outlining earlier here, is the focus for us is on deploying, building and deploying applications that can be delivered on the same infrastructure from a communications and a data management perspective, so that we know that buying an asset and a connectivity solution that you can leverage over and over and over again is critical to help meet business cases for communities that have multiple applications that they want to take advantage of. But even that can prove a significant barrier for entry for especially, it can be large or small, but we especially see it with smaller communities who just don't have the budgets or don't have the sort of the skill set to deploy and manage infrastructure that allows them to deploy multiple solutions on it. So one of the really exciting things that we've seen, and we've been, as Itron, working with our own utility customers, primarily electric utilities, for the last several years, is on the concept of leveraging a communications network and a data platform that has been deployed for smart metering, for example, because there's clear business cases there. There's throughout North America, Canada included, AMI programs have been deployed over the last decade and are still being rolled out. That's an infrastructure that, if the technology is multi-platform and multi-application ready, that could be used for more than just applications that are owned by that utility and managed by that utility. So what we've been talking through with our customers and have seen real traction on in the last, I'd say 12 to 18 months, it's very recent where this has really become a reality and started to manifest, is this concept of the local distribution company, the electric utility, who has an AMI solution deployed, using that same technology and that same infrastructure to provide services, connectivity services for other entities, whether they're utilities or municipalities that are within their service territory, where they have that infrastructure already deployed and it's doing the work for their own business case, their own use cases. Largely, it's smart metering based. But they can use that same infrastructure to connect other devices that are useful for those other utilities or those other municipalities in the service territory. So it's essentially providing a connectivity service. That's what the local distribution company's role would be with their existing AMI asset. In our case, it's Itron who's able to provide, whether it's water metering or gas metering or streetlight control, or acoustic detection, or wastewater management, the applications that Itai has talked about. But those assets can be deployed on that same network that the LDC is using for AMI. The data collected and sent securely to those tenant customers to provide services, new and additional services for their constituents and their citizens. So it's leveraging an asset that already exists to provide new services in order to enable sort of outcomes and results for essentially the same customer base, just in a different sphere. So we're really seeing these collaborations start to take place in the last 12 months, as I said. Itai, you can go to the next slide. So this is, we actually use this as sort of talking points in the early stages of talking to our electricity customers who have an AMI solution in terms of what's in it for them and why is this a useful undertaking. For certain, there are challenges in the way, and largely at this point, it's not a technology challenge. This network that we talk about for sure is multi-application capable. It can support multiple tenants. It can securely deliver data to other tenants. There's some work that has to be done to configure that, but it's not a technological roadblock. Most often, this is regulatory, and those are the considerations you have to think through. So providing services using an infrastructure that's paid for by the rate base to provide other services is a delicate proposition, but that's really the nut that we're seeing being addressed at this point. So these are the points that we talk through with our customer base on why they should be considering it and why they should be looking at it. First of all, it provides really minimal new cost to that utility who's already using the solution or this platform to collect and manage, collect data from smart meters, manage smart meters over their own network for their own means. Using it to provide services, there's often plenty of capacity. It's not an issue there. There's ways to provide this securely to third parties, and in this case, Itron takes that responsibility. It's really a matter of keep doing what you're doing as the LDC who's running their own AMI network. All you're doing is supporting a bit more data running over those networks. And what we've also seen is that the the service levels that the host utility has to meet for its own business case and the commitment it has to its own customers is at least as and often exceeds the service levels that any of the tenants would need to achieve. So they're already doing the work for themselves for their own commitment to their customer base and to their utility commission. It's a pretty easy leap for them to provide comparable or similar services to third parties. It minimizes operational risk for certain when there's having a provider like Itron really provide the service on top of using their network. We're not asking them, and the tenant utilities are really not asking them to do anything more than they're already doing. And it's a great way to set a template for providing services to other entities. If you can do this once and figure out how to do it once, it's a model that you can repeat and provide services to multiple different entities within your service territory. And we're really starting to see that at this point. And yes, there's some revenue opportunity, and we've seen that with a number of our customers, that there is money that they can generate from providing services as a connectivity provider. But we're really seeing the traction, honestly, is with sort of the goodwill that this builds within the communities and at the provincial or state level. This collaboration is something that it just makes a lot of sense versus having public entities or utility and public entities invest in the same thing, providing the same infrastructure to enable your own services. So point solutions are more expensive than a shared solution. That just from a social perspective, it makes more sense to the public to invest in something once and have it be paid for once and get multiple use and more value out of it. You can go to the next Itron. So just a very simple sort of overview about how this works. So these solutions that Itron has brought to market and that our investor-owned utility customers have bought and that they're using to provide these services for third parties are all RF mesh-based solutions. So it's a canopy where you need lots of devices that are building that connectivity. So it becomes a simple proposition to add in additional devices here or there because you've got fantastic coverage over a broad territory. You need that canopy application. So that's why this is so often the easiest for an LDC who has an AMI solution where they've got meters, electric meters that are powered and providing this connectivity through mesh technology all over their territory. It becomes a very simple leap to add another type of device or other types of devices to that same platform. So electricity metering and street light control, because street lights are ubiquitous throughout a municipality. They're at a great height for providing mesh-based connectivity. It's another great way of building the infrastructure that you would need to offer other services underneath it. And Itai has talked through a number of these already, but there's lots of different applications that are useful either to the utilities or to municipalities that then can be added to that infrastructure. You can go to the next Itai. So this is the very simple sort of illustration of how this can work from a sort of a multi-tenancy perspective. So in the red, these are the assets that would be owned by the host utility who's running, whether it's a smart city application or a streetlight control application rather, or an electric AMI network. They're going to do what they do. They're going to collect the data that they need. They're going to deploy the back office infrastructure to manage an AMI network and AMI use cases or streetlight control use cases, as it were. That's their asset, their investment. What's going to be shared is at that network layer, whether it's mesh technology and or cellular technology. That's the asset that's being used to provide connectivity. Once you have that framework in place and you're servicing all those devices that are outlined in red, being able to add different tenants with similar or other devices that can be added to that network with the same communication technology is a pretty easy next step. And we've got means of making sure that that's done securely from a data management perspective, where each party's data goes only to them. It's not really touched by anybody else. So it's secure, there's no privacy issues. And that's really the gross order level, sort of how this can be made to work. If you go to the next slide, please, Itai. So just why this makes so much sense and why we're really seeing traction here in the marketplace is a lot of this has to do, frankly, with sort of access to service, and it's a matter of fairness, quite frankly, where the entities that have the ability to deploy this kind of infrastructure to start their own digital transformations, start their path down industrial IoT use case enablement to provide new services and connected services for their own customers. Those same customers are customers of other utility services. So if you have an electric hookup, you're going to have water hookup. You may also have a gas hookup. You're also a member of the community where you're requiring and needing services from that community. If that infrastructure exists and can be justified by one of those service providers, it cannot always be ubiquitously justified by everybody else or the smaller service providers. So it's really about providing access and the ability for other service providers to really join this sort of digital revolution and provide services in a consistent way to the community members who really, at the end of the day, frankly, don't care how many different service providers are working on their behalf. They want to get the best service possible, and if we can provide consistent levels of service across different commodities, then that's only beneficial for the consumer. So that connectivity is essential to do that. And I think what we're also realizing or need to realize sort of as an industry is that LDCs and utilities who have been able to roll out AMI networks for their own use have really developed a skill set that is I think, very unique and very valuable. It's not just about providing connectivity as a service like a cellular provider or a carrier does, which of course is tremendously powerful, but being able to manage hundreds of thousands or millions of connected devices, make sure they're always on, make sure they're always reachable, managing them as assets and ensuring connectivity to them is a very different and specific skill set that a lot of AMI solution providers themselves as utilities have developed over the years. And that's a skill set that's really highly leverageable and useful to deliver these other services as well. Of course, because we then are opening the door to allow different services and different service providers to use the same connectivity, that's providing absolutely social benefit. The more services that can be provided at a lower cost, the better for us as consumers. It's engaging consumers with more services and providing them with comparable levels of sort of interaction and with their service providers. That's of course very valuable. There's also, I think, a lot to be said about this creates a platform through which local business can be generated and ideas that come out of the local community in terms of additional services that need to be offered, and even local service providers have the opportunity to deploy devices on those shared networks as well. So we're really seeing drives within communities to identify the next new great idea that's going to solve a local problem and being able to automate it. That's absolutely part of the solution here as well. And this, as Itai described earlier, this really just allows for more services to be delivered in a resilient way and be able to sort of weather the storms, real and virtual, that we see more and more as communities and the challenges that we're seeing from a sustainability perspective. We have more services that can participate and be in achieving the ends of becoming more resilient by taking this approach. So I'm going to pause there, and I think we're ready to go to questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation, Ty, and Itai as well. Itai, if you'd like to join us on screen as well, we can get going on our Q&A session. It was really fascinating to learn about how and why utilities should look at sharing network services and really the benefits it can provide. Just a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to type in any questions into your chat screen, that would be great, and we can filter them over to our presenters as we receive them. To start us off, guys, can you tell us a few examples where you see this type of shared network model working well?
Yeah, I can dive in there. So as I said off the top, Ferran, this is a new concept in terms of, well, it's not a new concept, but it's in terms of the execution of it and the collaboration becoming tangible is reasonably new. A great, very recent example is in San Antonio, Texas. We have a customer of ours, an existing customer of ours, CPS Energy, who has an AMI solution that they've deployed, is going to be collaborating with Itron to provide a smart water solution for for SAWS, which is the water solution provider for or the water provider for City of San Antonio. So this is the first real case of an actual contract being put in place and being executed and an agreement to move forward. There's a number of others that we're working on right now with between the two different parties that we're going to be able to talk about in the very near future, rather the near future, in probably January, February of next year. But San Antonio is a very good, timely, recent example.
Awesome, thank you.
Right, and just to add to that, of course, that the same network in San Antonio is used. Of course, the core tenant there was the AMI, as Ty said, with the electric and gas, and then expanding into water, and also into smart city applications such as streetlight control, water level monitoring, noise pollution, smart parking, air quality monitoring. There is a really the number of application is growing almost by the week there, which is extremely interesting. And the appetite comes, as the more they see things connecting. And there's an integration level both at the network level, which makes it economically very interesting, and aesthetically very interesting. Also, they list this antennas across the city, but also at the data level, bringing all this information together to one place, it creates suddenly an opportunity for a lot of insights that they didn't necessarily have before. How does the traffic correlate with the air quality and with the noise, for example, is a very interesting just tidbits of insights that suddenly, when all this data is coming to one place, we have access to, and we're really unfolding.
Fantastic, thank you very much, guys. So one of the questions we had coming in, does Itron offer a solution that is WISUN FAN compliant?
Yeah, yes, we do. So we're one of the original members of the WISUN Alliance and have been for a long time helping develop that specification. So we have certified products on the first release of that specification today, and are contributing to the evolution of that as well. So yes, we are.
Awesome. And can non-Itron AMI networks be tied into the Itron solution as well?
So what I'll say there is there's non-Itron devices. So not every meter has to be an Itron meter, for example, and in many cases it's not. So we've integrated the connectivity of the solution into many other device providers' devices, including meter providers. So in that way, it's quite open, and that's a real tenet of ours is that we are enabling solution providers of many stripes to be able to join the ecosystem and deploy their solutions over the same network.
Fantastic, thank you. Can the noise detection capability be used by authorities if they get noise-related complaints?
Of course, it's typically those that get the complaints ask for it. Otherwise, it's it's rare that it's a truly proactive measure. It's typically because they know there are issues with noise pollution that we see the need to deploy them.
Awesome, thank you. Any issues to date with rate basing non-specific utility required features?
That's a great question, and that's kind of at the heart of the challenge that I noted, that's no longer technology based, but it's regulatory. Is a regulated entity like an electric service provider providing a service that's not directly electric service connectivity to their and delivering electricity to their customer base is how do you account for that? So this is where we've had, and this is where we're really starting to see sort of changes at the public commission level or at the provincial and state level to allow these kinds of collaborations to happen. And that can be sort of allowing the host utility to collect fees for providing connectivity services and making that acceptable. Also sort of encouraging, having provinces, states, or counties really provide, create a mandate to encourage the sharing of infrastructure. We're seeing more of that. So there's really a loosening of the regulatory sort of knot that we've seen that's prevented these kinds of collaborations happening before. That's really why they're starting to happen at this point, is because the regulatory environment is existing to allow that to happen. That's not ubiquitous. I think that's important to say, is some places are ahead of others. But the riddle has been solved in enough places where I think there's becoming clear references for utilities and municipalities to point to and go speak to different jurisdictions to learn what they've done and how they've overcome that challenge. But it's happening more broadly at this point.
Fantastic, great answer, thank you. What is the most popular non-utility specific application, do you guys say?
I would say that from the smart city side, this is we're seeing a lot of interest in a few critical domains. The first one is around transportation, whether it is for traffic monitoring and pedestrian monitoring, understanding the situations on the roads. This is quite prevalent and global. Then we see a rise in demand for air quality monitoring in Asia. It's been a while, and now, and it is also gaining a lot of traction here in North America. And smart parking is another application that is getting a lot of interest because of it has a very strong impact on the transportation. First of all, you know that in downtown areas, about a third of the traffic during peak hours is people looking for a parking spot. So it's basically people turning around and using the medieval method of finding a parking spot based on luck, we have solutions today with partners, amazing partners that really help solve that problem and tremendously impact the traffic situation, but also the whole experience of what it is to look for a parking spot and pay for a parking spot. So the more people, the better that experience is, the more people will pay for parking, and then the more revenue for the city. Of course, the more efficient there will be in terms of how they manage their parking spots, and they can start thinking maybe about the variable parking rates depending on need, etc. So there is an opportunity for an increased revenue and improved quality of life, and of course environmental significant carbon reduction. So all these make this solution quite attractive. But all in all, I would say that every community is slightly different. And what is important is to understand the flexibility of whatever system and solution you pick to really adapt to the needs of your community. And yes, there are some that are cookie cutter solutions that you can take across multiple, but we also see the need for different communities to have their own solutions that don't replicate elsewhere. And having this openness and these standards and interoperability is quite important. And one of the strong value propositions that we believe we bring to the table.
Excellent, thank you. Does Itron provide all of the end data collection elements, such as noise, water, air, measurement capture?
So one of the slides that I showed the ability to centralize the data in one smart city platform. It's called Streetlight Vision, or SLV in short. And as we develop that platform, we're capable of bringing more and more data components into that platform. So yes, today, for example, in San Antonio, most of those sensors that I mentioned, their data is coming all the way to one single pane of glass and SLV.
Excellent. Can other providers of data collection services devices be used?
Yes, it's very important to have open APIs and very well defined APIs to enable the use of that information whenever the CT or the utility wants it to get to.
Yeah, I think it's just to underscore that. I think Itron's not an expert at acoustic detection. We're not experts at stormwater management. There's a lot of things we don't do. We're experts at metering. I think we're experts at enabling the infrastructure and putting in place the communications infrastructure and the data management infrastructure to allow those to create those solutions. But we have a broad ecosystem of solution providers that are experts in those domains that are bringing their solutions to be deployed on that platform.
Okay, thank you. Have regulators been open to these types of solutions?
So I think yes, I think that's where it's a mixed bag, I'd say, in terms of where different regulatory bodies are in their acceptance of this and their allowance of this kind of platform sharing and infrastructure sharing. But the trend clearly is that they're becoming more accepting of it. And we're seeing that we're now seeing real contracts being signed, agreements between different utilities of different types, municipalities across municipality, et cetera, where we're really seeing these relationships become formal and real and contractual, and that's because they're becoming more accepted by regulators, for sure.
So follow up, I guess, where's the most convincing required? Is it the federal, provincial, or regulators, utilities? Where would you say?
Great, yeah, great question. So I think where we've seen sort of the allowance for that has to happen is at sort of the state or provincial level. That if there's a mandate there that allows it to happen for municipalities and entities within the province or state, that seems to be the most important. I think we've seen often it's municipalities who are working with some of their utility service providers who are providing the impetus for, hey, we think this is important. We think that this collaboration is necessary. That a municipality is saying we can't afford to put up and manage this kind of infrastructure on our own. We need help to do this. And since these guys have already done that, we think we can get benefit from it. So it's a bit more grassroots, the drives and the push behind it, but I think it has to really manifest at the province and state level.
Thank you. So what do the new revenue opportunities to utilities look like?
I can start with that, Itay, and then I'll hand it over to you. So it's a great question. I think we're seeing at this point sort of baby steps where the easiest thing, and this was part of what I shared earlier in terms of what's in it for the host utility. The easiest thing for them is to essentially do nothing beyond what you're already doing to manage your own business. And just provide connectivity as a service to whoever the tenant is, whether it's another utility or a municipality. And in that way, it's very simple, and so the revenue that they're going to make is just a connectivity fee, if you will. And that can be, it's usually not huge, but it's a good first step. Where we've seen different of our customers really start thinking beyond that and what can they do next is when a utility today, or a large utility especially today, is providing, they're providing billing and call center and analytic services for themselves and for their own services, we certainly see several of our customers thinking about, can we do some of these other things that we're already really good at and doing it for ourselves, and extend that into a service or a service capability that they can offer beyond just their own business, their own regulated business, and for other purposes. I think the further you go into that, it's probably a little bit more challenging, which is why this is connectivity is a good first step, because they don't have to do anything beyond what they're doing already for themselves to start. But we certainly see that there's possibilities beyond that for certain to provide more services, and even to take some of the become a provider of connectivity outside of their own service territory. We've seen sort of the non-regulated arms of some utilities really look at taking this infrastructure that they become very good at managing themselves, and can we go and set that up with Itron's help and other people's help, and set that up and become a service provider outside of their own sort of native service territory. So there's a lot of different ways that this will likely evolve and develop from here.
Yeah, I think we see really, you said before in your presentation that the utility knows already how to and reach every house in their territory, and not many entities or organizations know how to do that, whether it's from the logistics or operational excellence that's required, and at levels of performance and reliability that are unseen in other industries, right? So taking that experience and adding to that a new type of level of innovation can completely create a new role for the UT, basically, in servicing our communities that spans way beyond what it is today, and a completely different meaning. We believe that we have a full roadmap to support transformation, and it's also a role of kind of holding by the hand the municipalities and the provinces to make them more sustainable, make them more resilient. How do we've seen a lot of mayors say, okay, our city will be carbon neutral by 2030 or 2035 or 2040, depending on how aggressive they want to be. The truth that behind that, a lot of people are scratching their heads. How are we going to achieve that? And the utility has a tremendous role to play in that, and they can play with, but it demands adoption of technology and use of that in collective infrastructure. It doesn't necessarily all translate to revenue directly, but in terms of the role that utility play, it's a much enhanced role that is a much bigger part of what it means to create and build and maintain the community.
Thank you. For municipalities, how does partnering with a utility compare to using the phone company cellular system?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, so in our experience, it's lower cost, to be frank. But I think it's also where there's a level of service that I think they can take more comfort in, that they know that if they're using the same infrastructure that a larger utility with higher levels of service that they hold for themselves, that they trust that utility, if there are outages or if there are equipment issues, or if there are challenges in delivering service, that they themselves are mandated to correct the issue and restore service very, very quickly. And that's really above and beyond what typically a carrier or a phone company would need to provide, or would contract to provide. So there's a safety in knowing that if it's good enough for them and their own business, then I can trust that it's going to be good enough for me. They really sort of see themselves as, I need the same level of service as they're already committed to provide their own selves. So in that way, it's a safe investment and a safe path forward.
Excellent, thank you. So AMI data volume can be very high. What is the data volume impact of adding in all of these additional devices for air, water, noise, etc.?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll take a stab at that, and then Itai can chime in for sure. So what we see in most networks, that probably all networks that we deploy, is the capacity of the network that's used for AMI data, and even if it's AMI 15-minute readings that are streaming in every 15 minutes, which is kind of the most use for an AMI solution that we've seen from a traffic perspective. It's very low capacity. We're not using, that's going to be less than half always, maybe close to 25% of the traffic that the network itself is capable of. So most of these other applications that we've talked about are far, far less intensive in terms of traffic that they're putting on the network itself. So we really haven't seen that become a challenge. There could be pockets where you need to shore up some connectivity here or there to ensure that you've got you've got a ubiquitous level of service that you can achieve. So there might be the need to add another takeout point here or there, but it's very, very minimal, very small. These sort of current day networks that we're deploying are very capable in terms of the capacity that they have.
What's interesting to add is that, well, the experience that we have gathered around the decades on connectivity and managing those networks is important, because then we can really map the right infrastructure and the right connectivity technology to each use cases. But one of the things we've seen, for example, is that when we've added, for example, streetlight controls to an AMI network, what has effectively happened is that we improve the performance of the AMI net on the mesh side, and really help the latency in the system and improve the overall performance. So that was very interesting.
Great, thank you. So would it be appropriate to refer to this solution as an overlay on an AMI network?
It's in some cases it is, but it's mostly an enhancement or a reinforcement of that same network, I would say.
Perfect. So we're just about at time. I might have a quick time to ask one or two more. So what applications are best suited for cities to start leveraging a utility smart metering or a smart streetlight network?
So I can start with that. So I think as noted earlier, both of those, so smart metering, electric smart metering, or streetlight management, are both fantastic first tenants, because especially with the mesh technology, where it's all about, the connectivity is essentially built into every communicating device, and the more communicating devices you have, the stronger your network is going to be. So because electric meters sit on the side of every premise, every home, every business, that's a great way to build a canopy solution. Because streetlights are pretty ubiquitous throughout the city, and they're 15, 20 feet in the air, that provides terrific coverage throughout the city as well. So both of those are great places to start. If you do the two together, as Itai said, that just provides all the more value. But both of those they're really both viable first tenants to build from there.
And let's see if we can ask one more. What are some shared network regulatory considerations for both the host and tenant organizations?
Yeah, great question. So, and I think it'll vary depending on the jurisdiction. I think from the tenant side, I think the consideration is and where we've seen the most focus is on ensuring that the duration of service that they expect, if it's 10 years, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be, that's aligned with and can be sustained or supported by the host utility. That's a key consideration. I wouldn't say that's not really a regulatory constraint. That's more just of a continuity of service requirement that the tenant will have in their requirements that they're bidding for. I think the more the concern is on the host side, and if this is an asset, well, I think all of these assets are part of a regulated business case with a regulated rate of return. Is if you're collecting new revenues using that infrastructure beyond its use, its expected use, and that it was approved for from a use case perspective or a rate case perspective, what happens to that revenue, and how do we justify collecting it? That's been the hardest part for different utilities in different jurisdictions to address. But it is addressable. There's lots of different ways for that to sort of be managed, and I think typically it's utility commissions realizing that yes, there is a benefit in these entities sharing a service. We will not have the same customer base paying twice or three times or four times for connectivity for different things. They're going to pay once. And yes, it's fair for that host provider to collect something for the use of that network by a third party. If at the end of the day that comes out as net positive for the community and the rate base and the rate payers, which it does, then it can be justified in that way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That was great. So I think we'll end it there. And thank you to our audience for asking those great questions, and to our presenters for their presentation and then taking the time to answer those great questions. With that, we'll bring today's session to a close. But just before we go, mark your calendars for our final conversation series webinar of 2020 on Tuesday, December the 15th. PwC Canada will have a panel discussion on cybersecurity, understanding an OT attack. We will be back with more webinars and events in 2021, and they can be found in our monthly newsletter, current affairs, or you can go to the news and events section on our website at electricity.ca. In closing, I would once again like to thank our presenters, Ty and Itai from Itron, and for each of you for joining us today. This concludes today's session, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.